Imagine someone just hands you a massive pile of cash.
Okay, I'm liking this already.
Right. But the only catch is to actually keep it, you have to willingly give a chunk of it away to a total stranger.
Ah, there's always a catch.
Always.
Yeah.
And, cold calculated math says you should just be ruthless, like take what you can, leave them with nothing. But human biology, it completely rewrites that math.
It really does.
So, welcome to your custom-tailored deep dive into game theory. Today, we're pulling together this really fascinating stack of sources. We've got behavioral economics papers, corporate strategy playbooks from Umbrex, classic econ port breakdowns.
A really rich stack.
Yeah, and the mission here is to shortcut your path to understanding the hidden mechanics of human interaction.
Because we usually think of game theory as this hyper-rational Wall Street approach to life. A binary world of winning and losing.
Exactly, like how to bankrupt your opponent in Monopoly.
Right. But the reality exposed by these sources is just much richer. We're going to look at how we move from that cutthroat zero-sum competition to the messy reality of human trust.
And eventually, how to use the actual mathematics of fairness to build bigger pies instead of just, fighting over the crumbs.
Which is the best part. It's not just theory, it's how you actually grow value.
I love that. If you're listening right now and thinking this is just about ruthless competition, you are going to see a completely different side of things today.
Absolutely.
But, let's start at that baseline, though, because we kind of have to understand the ruthless stuff first.
We do, the foundation.
Right, zero-sum games. This is the realm where my game is exactly equal to your loss. I win $5, you lose $5.
Right. And the math here is entirely focused on self-preservation. The core concept our sources highlight for this is the Minimax theorem.
Min-max, so minimizing and maximizing.
Exactly. In any strictly competitive zero-sum environment, you have two players. One wants to maximize their payoff, and the other wants to minimize the opponent's payoff.
Makes sense.
And the theorem proves that your best strategy isn't necessarily to go for the biggest possible win. It's actually to calculate a move that minimizes your maximum possible losses.
So you're guaranteeing yourself a floor. You're capping how badly you can get hurt.
Yes. Sources use this classic matrix to illustrate it called the presidential election game.
And just as a quick aside for you listening, we aren't getting into actual politics here.
No, not at all.
This is strictly a mathematical scenario laid out in the original text to just demonstrate the theory. We're totally impartial here.
Right, it's just variables in an equation. So in this model, you have two candidates deciding what to focus their campaign on. They can choose morality, tax cuts, economy, or society.
Okay, 4 options.
Yeah. And depending on the combination of choices between the two candidates, there's a fixed shift in polling points.
And this is where the math reveals something highly counterintuitive, right?
Totally. When you calculate the equilibrium for this election scenario using that min-max theorem, the optimal move is actually what they call a mixed strategy.
A mixed strategy. Meaning what exactly?
Meaning you don't just pick tax cuts and stick to it. You randomize your choices based on a very specific mathematically calculated ratio.
Yep.
So for the maximizing player, the math in the source says you play a mix of 3/7 for one option and 4/7 for another.
And the minimizing player does what, 2/7 and 5/7?
Exactly. And both end up with an expected payoff or cost of exactly 1/7 of a point.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because wait, if I tell you exactly what I'm going to do, shouldn't you always be able to beat me?
That's the natural assumption, yeah.
It's like calling my shot in a game of pool and telling my opponent exactly how to block me. If I'm playing to win a highly competitive election, why would I leave my actual moves up to a randomized ratio? Doesn't that just introduce chaos?
It feels wrong instinctively, right?
That's very wrong. How does the math say you don't lose an advantage? If my opponent knows I'm randomizing between a couple of specific platforms, shouldn't they just exploit that?
You'd think revealing your strategy is a fatal flaw. But think of it less like an election and more like a high-stakes game of rock, paper, scissors.
Okay, rock, paper, scissors.
If your opponent knows you're going to play rock 100% of the time, they will destroy you. They just play paper.
Right, every single time.
But what if you randomize your throws? A third rock, a third paper, a third scissors.
Oh, then it wouldn't matter what they throw. Over time, we'd just tie.
Exactly. They can't exploit you because there's no pattern to exploit.
You've neutralized them.
Right. You haven't guaranteed a win on every single throw, but you've neutralized their ability to beat you consistently. In the presidential game matrix, the math works the exact same way, just with different weights instead of an even three-way split.
Like the 3/7 and 4/7.
Yes. By randomizing your platform choices according to that specific calculated ratio, you perfectly equalize the expected payoffs of your opponent's possible responses.
I see. So you aren't telling them exactly what you will do, you are telling them the probability distribution.
Exactly. Because you've balanced the odds perfectly, no matter which option they choose to counter you, they mathematically cannot push your expected polling points below that specific threshold we mentioned.
So it's not about finding a magic I win button. It's about building a mathematical fortress.
A mathematical fortress. That's a great way to put it.
Because the math is perfectly balanced, revealing my strategy doesn't hurt me. My opponent's optimal response is already baked into my calculations. It's completely airtight.
It is airtight. But, and here's the massive catch, that perfect math relies entirely on humans acting like perfectly ruthless, rational robots.
Which we definitely are not.
Not even close. It assumes we only care about maximizing our own material payoff at the direct expense of the other person.
Right.
But what happens when the game gets longer and actual human emotions enter the chat? The predictive power of traditional zero-sum game theory just starts to break down spectacularly.
Which brings us to the human element. Here's where it gets really interesting. If we have the math to perfectly defend ourselves and ruthlessly extract value, why don't we always just defect and stab each other in the back?
Right. Why don't we?
The sources highlight this massive divergence between theory and reality using something called the Centipede game.
Oh, this is a classic.
Yeah. So imagine a pot of money sitting between us, and it grows every round. On your turn, you can either take the larger portion of the pot, which ends the game immediately, or you can pass.
And passing grows the pot significantly.
Exactly. But it hands the decision power over to me.
Right. Now, if we apply the cold logic we just discussed, traditional backward induction predicts the very first player will take the money immediately on move one.
Move one, just grab it and run.
Just grab it. And why? Because if I pass, I have to assume you will act selfishly and take the money on move two, leaving me with almost nothing.
Right, you're anticipating my ruthlessness.
Exactly. So I defect immediately. Game over.
But when they actually ran this in experiments with real people, the results were completely wild. In a 4-move Centipede game, only 7% of people took the money on the first move.
7%. That's nothing.
And it gets crazier when they stretched it to a 6-move game. A tiny 1%. 1%. People just kept passing, they kept trusting each other. Traditional game theory completely failed to predict what real humans would do.
What's fascinating here is how the academic papers in our sources explain this failure. They introduce the trust minigame.
Okay, the trust minigame. How does that work?
It features 2 players,
Yeah.
Anne the truster and Bob the trustee.
Anne and Bob, classic econ names.
Always. So Anne can choose to stay out, securing a small guaranteed payoff for both of them, or she can go in, which means trusting Bob.
If she goes in.
If Anne goes in, the pot grows, but now Bob has a choice. He can share the larger pot fairly, or he can keep the lion's share for himself and leave Anne with nothing.
Again, cold math says Bob takes the lion's share, so Anne should just stay out. But she doesn't, and Bob doesn't steal it. Why? Because humans feel guilt.
Guilt, the great motivator.
Yeah. The sources dive deep into this concept of simple guilt theory. Bob doesn't just care about the dollar amount in his hand. He suffers a real psychological penalty guilt if he lets Anne down relative to what he thinks she expects of him.
And this introduces a fascinating layer to game theory called belief hierarchies.
Belief hierarchies.
Yes. We have first-order beliefs, which are simply what you believe the other person will do. For example, Anne's belief that Bob will probably share the money.
Okay.
But then, crucially, we have second-order beliefs. This is what Bob believes that Anne believes about him.
I love this part because this second-order belief thing is exactly like the anxieties of modern dating or texting.
Oh, completely.
Right. If I'm agonizing over how to reply to a text, I'm making a decision based entirely on what I think you think my intentions are.
You're in a loop.
Yeah. I'm acting on my assumption of your expectations. In the game, Bob decides to share the money not because they signed a contract, but because he believes Anne expects him to share. The psychological pain of violating her expectation actually outweighs the extra cash he'd get from keeping it.
Exactly.
Guilt is literally altering the mathematical payoff.
That's spot on. And what the sources reveal is that this guilt sensitivity is often role-dependent.
Role-dependent.
Yeah, the academic models show that humans don't just feel generalized guilt all the time.
Yeah.
The sensitivity is frequently triggered only when a person is explicitly placed in the role of the trustee,
Oh, interesting.
when someone actively demonstrates reliance on them.
Wait, really? So just the act of you trusting me physically changes how I evaluate the game?
Yes, and it's not just a behavioral theory. It is backed by biology. The sources cite animal literature and human studies focusing on oxytocin, a hormone that reacts strongly to social cues.
Oxytocin, the cuddle hormone?
Right. When you are placed in a position of trust, your biology actually shifts to promote pro-social behavior. Your brain actively works to avoid the negative physical feeling of letting someone down.
So we're literally wired to cooperate.
We really are.
We aren't the perfectly ruthless computers from the zero-sum games, because biology acts as a tax on ruthless behavior. We naturally want to build trust and avoid guilt.
And this is a massive turning point.
Right, because since we know humans naturally lean toward trust and cooperation, often to avoid guilt, we need a mathematical framework to understand scenarios where people actively choose to form alliances. This forces us to move from non-cooperative theory to cooperative game theory.
Exactly. Cooperative or coalitional game theory focuses on joint actions, binding agreements, and how groups function, like contract law, external enforcement.
And the foundational mathematical property of this field is called superadditivity.
Superadditivity, which basically means the whole is strictly greater than the sum of its parts.
Right. If you and I work alone, maybe we produce 5 units of value each. But if we form a coalition, we combine our resources, and suddenly we produce 15 units.
You've created extra value just by teaming up.
The pie gets bigger.
But superadditivity immediately creates a massive mathematical and social problem. It's called the grand coalition.
The grand coalition sounds imposing.
It is. Once everyone in a market or a society realizes that teaming up creates the biggest possible pie, everyone forms one giant group. But once you have that massive pile of resources, how do you fairly divide the spoils?
Oh, the split.
Right. Everyone contributed different amounts, took different risks. How do you allocate the payoff so the coalition doesn't immediately tear itself apart from resentment?
You know, think about this for your own life. We've all done a group project in school or at work.
Oh, the dreaded group project.
Right? One person stays up all night doing the research, another person formats a couple of slides, and a third person literally does nothing but put their name on the title page.
Yep, the freeloader.
And then everyone gets the exact same A grade. It feels deeply unfair. How do you mathematically prove what each person actually deserves?
This was actually a huge problem in mathematics until 1953, when Lloyd Shapley solved it. He introduced the Shapley value.
The Shapley value?
Yes, it is a unique payoff vector, a formula that calculates exactly what a player's fair share is based on their marginal contributions.
Okay, marginal contributions. Break down how that actually works under the hood. How does it calculate fairness?
It works by imagining the group forming in every possible sequence.
Every sequence.
Yeah. Say there are 3 of you on that group project. The Shapley value calculates what happens if person A starts the project alone. Then person B joins. How much did the project's quality improve the exact second person B walked in?
Okay, got it.
That's their marginal contribution for that specific sequence. But then the formula calculates again as if person B started it and person A joined second.
Oh, wow.
It looks at every possible permutation of the group forming, calculates the value a player adds at the exact moment they enter the coalition, and averages it all out.
That is brilliant. It completely isolates your individual impact, regardless of who you happen to be standing next to.
Exactly.
And my absolute favorite part of the Shapley value is what it does to the group project slacker. The math literally guarantees what they call the null player property.
Yes, the null player property is one of the strict fairness conditions the Shapley value guarantees, along with efficiency and additivity.
And what does it mean for the slacker?
If a player's marginal value to any coalition is 0, meaning across every single permutation, the moment they walk into the room, the project's value does not increase, their allocation of the final payoff must be exactly 0.
0 allocation. It's just so elegant. And it guarantees symmetry too, right?
Yes, symmetry.
Meaning, if 2 people add the exact same value in every scenario, they get the exact same payout. Nobody gets a bigger slice just because of their title or because they talk the loudest.
Precisely. The Shapley value is the literal blueprint for defining fairness. It provides a stable mathematical foundation for diverse groups to combine resources without the alliance collapsing. We also briefly see concepts like the core, where no coalition has an incentive to leave, and the Nakamura number, but the Shapley value is the star here.
It really is. But knowing the math of fairness in a theoretical lab setting is one thing. What happens when you're in a cutthroat market where competitors are actively trying to bankrupt you?
The real world?
Yeah. How do you force a purely selfish rival to cooperate?
That is the million-dollar question. To see this in action, we have to move out of the lab and apply the math directly to modern business strategy. The sources introduce a framework called co-opetition.
Co-opetition, so cooperating and competing.
Exactly. It was popularized by Adam Brandenburger and Barry Nailbuff. It basically forces businesses to stop looking at their industry as a zero-sum war. They introduce a concept called the value net, which expands how you analyze your environment.
The value net.
Right. You don't just look at your customers, your suppliers, and your competitors.
Yeah.
You introduce a critical fourth player, complementers.
Complementers. These are firms whose products or services actually increase the value of your product.
Right.
The classic example is like hot dogs and hot dog buns, or a bit more modern, software applications and operating systems. By themselves, they have some value. Together, the value skyrockets.
Exactly. And to navigate this value net, Brandenburger and Nailbuff created the PARTS framework, P-A-R-T-S.
Parts. What does it stand for?
It stands for players, added value, rules, tactics, and scope. It's a systematic way to alter the game you are playing so that cooperating with you becomes the natural, rational response of everyone else involved, even your rivals.
Okay, let's walk through the specific real-world case study from the Umbrex source because it illustrates this perfectly.
It really does.
We have a $650 million electric vehicle charging network operator. They are bleeding cash in a brutal price war with rivals.
Just a race to the bottom.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, a new entrant is threatening to dominate the entire market with a brand new proprietary charging standard. If our operator plays a zero-sum game, they just keep cutting prices, destroy their own margins, and eventually get crushed by the new proprietary standard anyway.
But instead, they use the PARTS framework to completely rewrite the rules. First, players. Instead of fighting their rivals to the death, they form an interoperability alliance, a roaming agreement, with their biggest rival and several major automakers.
Now, let me jump in here and challenge this, because forming a roaming agreement with your biggest rival sounds like a massive risk.
It sounds crazy.
Right. If we established early on that businesses can be ruthless, what stops that rival from just using the alliance to steal all your customers once the networks are connected?
And that's exactly why you need the next two steps of PARTS. Added value and rules, you bind them structurally. For added value, our operator contributes their top-tier reliability monitoring software to the alliance. Together, they establish a unified 97% uptime standard.
97%, that's huge.
It is. They are building a massive, reliable asset that the new proprietary entrant can't replicate alone. Then, for rules, they establish transparent wholesale roaming fees between the networks using an open API.
Ah, I see. So if the rival tries to break the rules to steal customers, they jeopardize the entire open network, which is the only thing keeping the proprietary threat at bay.
Exactly.
They need the alliance more than they need to poach a few users. They've been mathematically cornered into cooperating.
Perfectly said. The gang has shifted. Then we look at tactics. They make a massive public announcement with the automakers. They signal to the market and to consumers that this new open standard is the future.
And that tactic completely freezes the momentum of the proprietary competitor because buyers don't want to get stuck with a closed, isolated system.
Right. And finally, scope. They roll this alliance out in 2 major metro areas first to prove the concept works before expanding it nationwide. And the results of this co-opetition strategy laid out in the source are staggering. Because drivers can now roam across networks seamlessly, overall utilization of the chargers goes up by 19%.
19% just from cooperating.
Just from cooperating. The proprietary entrance adoption completely stalls out. And best of all, the original operator preserves their profit margins by differentiating themselves with a premium membership tier. They grew the pie with their rival and still captured a highly profitable slice.
So what does this all mean for the listener? How do you apply this if you aren't running a $600 million company?
Well, co-opetition is about growing the pie with complementers while competing for your fair slice. You can apply parts to your career, small business negotiations, anything. You just have to map out your value net. Who are your complementers? What rules can you change?
Right.
I will add one serious note from the sources, though. In business, you must always stay within legal antitrust guardrails. You can cooperate on standards and interoperability, but you can never collude on pricing or market division.
That is a crucial distinction. We are definitely not endorsing illegal monopolies here.
No, absolutely not.
So let's zoom out and look at the journey we've just taken. We started with the cold, perfectly rational, and frankly ruthless math of the Minimax theorem in zero-sum elections, where we learned how revealing your strategy builds a mathematical fortress.
The baseline.
Then we discovered that human biology completely disrupts those cold models in the Centipede and trust games. Because of simple guilt aversion and second-order beliefs, we actually care about the expectations of others, which biologically wires us for trust.
It breaks the old models.
From there, we explored the Shapley value, which mathematically defines exactly what a phase share looks like based on your actual marginal contribution. And finally, we saw how the parts framework allows businesses to use that collaborative math to turn bitter rivals into powerful complementers.
It really is a complete paradigm shift in how you view strategy.
Yeah.
Understanding these frameworks allows you to navigate your daily interactions, whether you're negotiating a salary, navigating office politics, or starting a business, without defaulting to a toxic win-lose mindset.
Exactly.
You have the tools to recognize when a game is artificially constrained
Yeah.
and the strategic knowledge to change the rules.
You don't have to be the cold, calculating computer algorithm we talked about at the beginning. You can embrace the messy, cooperative reality of human interaction, but arm yourself with the math to make sure you aren't taken advantage of.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a final, rather urgent concept to consider as we wrap up.
Okay, what's that?
Our entire model of human cooperation, the trust minigame, the release of oxytocin, our physical aversion to guilt, is heavily reliant on second-order beliefs.
Right.
We act cooperatively because we can read social cues, we feel empathy, and we care about what we think the other person expects of us in a tangible face-to-face way.
So the biology of trust really requires proximity. We need to feel the interaction.
Which raises an important question. What happens in an increasingly digital, anonymous world?
Oh, wow.
Right? When we negotiate through screens, when we interact via text or anonymous avatars, we strip away the biological cues that trigger that protective guilt.
Because we can't see their face, we can't see the disappointment.
Exactly. Without those physical, social cues to anchor our second-order beliefs, do we lose our natural wiring for trust? Without the biological penalty of guilt acting as a tax on ruthless behavior, are we at risk of reverting back to playing purely cutthroat zero-sum games with each other online?
Wow. If the computer algorithms from our opening analogy are cold and ruthless specifically because they can't feel guilt, are we building digital environments that force humans to act exactly the same way?
It's something to think about.
That is definitely something to mull over the next time you're interacting with a stranger through a screen. Are you playing a zero-sum game, or can you find a way to cooperate? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into game theory. Until next time, keep questioning the rules of the game you're playing.